What's up, YouTube? Episode 122. Finishing up the Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. It's broken up into 3 sections, talking about culture. First section is about safety, second about vulnerability, and the third about purpose. Get all those 3 together, start to build a good culture in your work, home, wherever. Make sure you pick this book up. It's really good. Episode 122, we're going to knock this out. All right. Here we go. 3, 2. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Made for More Consulting Podcast. This is Mario, episode 122. If this is your first time listening, I want to tell you thank you for listening. And we are a podcast that's focused on building leadership and personal development. We believe that if we aren't growing as leaders, then our team isn't growing and they won't grow. So we want to make sure as leaders that we are continuing to grow, because we say this, so goes the leader, so goes the culture. You want to be a leader that grows. This past week, I shared something on my social media that I have to remind myself all the time. This is a huge reminder for myself, and it's this: we are here to pour into other people. As leaders, we're here to pour into other people, but how can we pour into others if we are on empty? And that's always a challenge to me, and that's why we have Made for More. We're here to motivate, inspire, and encourage everyone, but we want to make sure that we're here to pour into other people, and then we have things to pour into other people. Flying solo today. We're going to knock this last section of this book out. It's called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups. And I love this book. I think it would go very well paired with Trust and Inspire if you're trying to build a new culture in your company, business, what have you. And it's called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. Each section has some great tips on what you need to do to establish that culture. The first section is over safety, second is vulnerability, and third is over purpose. So when you combine those things, you begin to build a good culture. But it starts with us as the leaders. So flying solo, if you look at YouTube, and next week we will be discussing the topic for June. We're already in June. We just finished school this past week. My girls are out. They're already itching to do things and wanting to go over sleepovers, wanting to go swim, and it's that'll be the summer for us. I'll be in Midland June, I believe 10th through the 18th. I get the opportunity to teach at a church June 11th, Greenwood Baptist Church, and then that's Father's Day weekend, or the following week is Father's Day weekend. But one of the things I wanted to mention to you guys is tomorrow, May 29th, Memorial Day. Make sure that you take the time out to recognize why we I wouldn't say celebrate, but why we acknowledge this date, so that for those that have given the ultimate sacrifice for our country, so that we can do things like this podcast, have the freedoms that we do, regardless of where our country is at right now. We have to be thankful for the people that gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. So one of the things that I challenge people to do is maybe post a story of someone that you know that has given their life. On here we've talked about Mike Mansour. We've talked about we also said the Murph, Michael Murphy. There's been quite a few people that we talked about as far as the military that have given their life for our country. So Memorial Day tomorrow, make sure that you do yourself a favor, and if you have kids, and maybe pass on the message of what that means. But here we go, episode 122. We're going to recap a little bit. Section 1, building safety. If your team is feel safe, they're going to be trustworthy, they're going to be able to trust you. They're not going to feel like they have to look behind their back or guard their own back. So the second section is vulnerability. So if they are safe in an environment, they're going to feel like they are trusted, and you're being able to be trusted as their leader, and they're going to be vulnerable. Once they're vulnerable, then more trust is built and more capital is built, and then guess what? When you ask them to do something, you have a good team. But then this third one today we're going to be talking about is establish purpose. Very, very key to all our teams, establishing purpose. So like I just said, if we have a place where people feel safe, and feels if they aren't having to watch their own back, they allow themselves to be vulnerable. And when they are vulnerable, they'll pursue the purpose of the team and the team's purpose, and you give them purpose and they'll know where they're going. So today, let's wrap up this book. Remember, I don't read the entire book on here, and with this being episode 122 and the last episode of this book, I want to make sure that you know that if you would like a free copy of this book, just email me at mario@madeformoreconsulting.com. I have one book, just one, and I can send it to you. It's marked up, but if you want it, I'll give it to you. Just email me. So chapter 13, 311 words. Real quick, this chapter, I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about it. It's about Johnson & Johnson, the Johnson & Johnson story, and the importance of purpose. In 1975, the president of this company wanted to meet with the highest leaders and discuss the credo, like the purpose, the purpose statement of why they stood for what they stood for. And he wanted to challenge those leaders and say, hey, you know what? Here's what the credo said. It says we believe our first responsibility is to doctors, nurses, and patients, to mothers and fathers, to all others who use our products and services. In meeting their needs, everything we do must be of high quality. We must constantly strive to reduce our costs in order to maintain reasonable prices. Customers' orders must be serviced promptly and accurately. So that was their credo. Well, their president comes in and says, hey, I want to challenge that. And some of their highest leaders said, hey, why are you challenging that credo? Because it's really good. Well, then the president said, well, are we really doing that? I want to go around all our places where we produce our product and ask, do you even know the credo? Are you guys even keeping in mind that we support doctors and nurses first and then customers? So he challenged that, and by him challenging that and talking to people about it, he made an awareness of the purpose statement, the credo of the company. And so I got to stop right there and just ask us, do we know the purpose of our company? One of the things that Slab, one of our clients says, keep it 100. And then we broke the word Slab up into serve, listen, and learn, accountable, and bust your butt. So that's what Slab stands for. So if you're ever somewhere in their organization, are you doing those 4 things? And if you're not, then you need to readjust, because that's the purpose, to keep it 100. So back to Johnson & Johnson. And I want to ask you, do you know, again, your credo, your purpose? Does your company have one? Are you guys pursuing that? And if you're not, check this out. Johnson & Johnson begins to put an awareness on this credo, awareness on their purpose, and they start moving efficiently. And then all of a sudden, in 1982, something crazy happened that would test the company to its core. They had just been focusing on the credo, their purpose, getting back to a company that just goes all out, zeroes in, aims at their purpose, and one of their products, Tylenol, began to kill people in a centralized area. And it was because it was laced with poison. So what's interesting is these guys begin to ask, what do we need to do? We should shut down. We should say something. The government, they had to fly to Washington, D.C. They meet with government officials, because it can be, they have millions and millions of pills everywhere. And all hell is breaking loose in their organization. They don't have a PR department. They don't have these things for someone to address the media, but they do know that people are dying in a centralized area. And so the government's saying, hey, you don't need to shut down. Let's just try to keep this contained. And let's think about this for a second. What do we do in our lives or in profession when we are questioned about what we're doing, or we make a mistake? Let's say you make a mistake and somebody questions that. Like, what were you thinking? Just like them, they were mass producing these things that help people, and all of a sudden they make a mistake or something happens and their character's about to be revealed. Remember, adversity is not going to produce the majority of your character. It's going to reveal what you're made of. And so do we stick to who we are? Do we blame others? Do we keep doing the same thing? This was their defining moment in their organization. So what ends up happening, let me just read this. It says they decided to go against what the government officials had said, and they suggested to recall 31 million pills. Like, they just said, hey, we're recalling them all. And the government said, hey, you may start a firestorm of panic. But well, they went ahead and did it anyways. They recalled 31 million pills and millions of dollars worth that they were going to lose. And this surely would be the end of a great company, is what most people thought, because of the way they went about it. Well, after the recall, they ignored, the advice of the FDA and the FBI, and quickly somebody asked them, "Hey, what's your reasoning behind this decision?" And this was what the president said: "We believe our first responsibility is to doctors, nurses, and patients, to mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services." So over the next few days, Johnson & Johnson essentially transformed itself from a pharmaceutical company into a public safety organization. It designed and manufactured innovative tamper-proof packaging, developed exchange, disposal, and refund programs, and built relationships with the government, law enforcement, and media. 4 weeks after the attacks, it mobilized more than 2,000 salespeople to visit doctors, pharmacists, to listen to their concerns and inform them of upcoming changes. So all of a sudden you have Johnson & Johnson, who's doing really well, promoting or selling Tylenol, and all of a sudden this happens, and they had to redo who they were quickly, but they kept the same credo. We believe in our first responsibility is to doctors, nurses, and patients, mothers and fathers, and all those who use our products. So they stuck with it, they zeroed in on it, and they just had to establish what they needed at that point in time. So instead of dropping, people began to see that they were taking ownership of the problem, and they were standing behind who they were, what they stood for, and the company rebounded and made it out. This chapter also, it's interesting. I'm not gonna read it all. I think you should buy the book. The next story it talks about is about two sets of teachers, or actually a set of teachers, and some people came in and told these teachers, "Hey, you're going to be given a certain number of gifted students. They're high capacity. They're going to be the future leaders of America." And they just went ahead and gave them these students. Well, what happened? Those students became very successful. They made great grades, but they made that because the teachers in the schools gave them more attention, focused in on them, listened to them, asked them questions. But in the end, the university that was doing this study said, "Hey, just so you know, these students were just regular students, if not the low poverty scale. They were not intellectual. They didn't come from promising homes. You just thought they were, and you just proved our point of if you focus on something and you put enough effort in, you can see that you're going to reap the reward of what you put into it." So it goes back to the purpose of a teacher in this chapter was to go, "Hey, we're here to make an impact on these students." And these, it was a fake test. It was just a way to see if these teachers really put in the time with these students. And it all goes back to your purpose. It goes back to what are you doing and why are you doing it? Who are you? So if you're a teacher, I would ask, who do you want to be as an individual? Because who you are is going to come out as a teacher. If you're a pastor, who you are is going to come out as a pastor. If you're a general manager or an owner of a business, who you are is going to come out the way you run, and in the way you run your business organization. Mom or dad, if you're a mom or dad, who you are is going to come out as a mom or dad, right? So I want to end this chapter with us just looking at this question that I wrote down. Do you know who you are? Like, what do you stand for? Can you write that down? Who do you want to be? Or if you already know that, answer the question. Do you know who you are and what do you stand for? And I know we've heard it all the time, and we've said it on here before, is if you don't know what you stand for, you're going to fall for anything. Meaning, what are your values? What do you stand for as far as, hey, this is who I want to be? And with one of my clients last week, we have a sheet of about 200 values that we got to narrow down to 10. I know that's tough, but if you can narrow it down from 10 to 5, you zero in on your purpose with those values, and then you put action to those values and that purpose, and guess what? You begin to make steps forward. So if that's something you want to do, something you need to know more about, let me know. Chapter 14 is this. It says the hooligans and the surgeons. Really good chapter. Again, these next few chapters are all about stories. Well, the hooligans are some soccer rioters. Every 4 years, these soccer rioters just wreak havoc on these towns because it's the World Cup, right? And so coming up on the fourth year, this city says, hey, you know what? These rioters are going to come out and they're going to just demolish our town. So we're going to be prepared. We're going to put more police out there. We're going to hire more. So what they did was that, and again, that year, they were overrun. The police, they weren't even ready. So the next 4 years pass, and they hire a guy that builds teams, and he said, we're gonna try to do something different. And what he did was he did not order more riot gear. He ordered some blue uniforms, had everybody suit up. But then he said, hey, I want us to send small signals of trust to the people who we know are going to be here. And they may be rioters, but I want us to start to begin to trust them. So over time, they sent these small signals meaning they were in proximity of the people in the city. They were hanging out in the city. They were at the bars, just starting conversations with people. They were getting to know the people in the community. One of the examples was, hey, you know, they were playing soccer in the streets, and the soccer ball went to that police officer, that person, and if they were asked to stop kicking the ball, they'd give it back or whatnot. They weren't being the enemy. The police were being somewhat of a, hey, we're partners in this community. Well, the World Cup came, and guess what? They said there was one instance of one small arrest rather than the thousands of people that they had the previous years. And all this was because they built trust, and the trust changed the outcome. And so what was the purpose? The purpose behind it was this. If you zero in on saying, hey, we're going to build trust. The purpose of my team is to build community, to build, to take down the walls of separation between us and other people. Whether it's, if we're talking about us, if we have a company that has 4 or 5 stores, 4 or 5 locations, maybe 400 locations, at some point you got to hire enough people so that you are in somewhat connection to the boots on the ground. Because if you put so many abstractions, is what Simon Sinek calls it, you don't have an idea of what that person's facing on the front lines. You're so far removed that when you pass an order down or a request down and it gets to that person that's actually doing the work, they're going to go, hey, that person, he or she has no idea what I'm doing here. So you have to have a team that builds trust, that knows what your people are going through. They have to be able to understand what your people are going through. So in turn, you build trust, you send signals of trust all through different areas of your organization. And so when things are requested of them, or there's a shift change or a new leader comes in, everything runs smoothly because they trust you. Okay, so that's the purpose behind that. Another part in this chapter 14, it talks about the two surgeons, two surgical groups. They are going to be given a task of using a new way of doing surgery. And one of the things that I love about this is where stories come into play. There's 2 groups. One of the groups knows why they're doing the surgery. They've seen and heard stories after they did the surgeries of people that have survived, and they are all about it. They've seen what they do connected to people's lives, those lives being saved, right? Then you have another group that's very intellectual, probably one of the best in the land, and they're just going through the motions. They're getting bored. They're asking why they can't move up, or hey, what time can I come in? They're lagging, but they're the most intellectual group. So what's the difference between the 2 teams? And this is what he talks about in this chapter, is the team that was the best and most successful was the team that knew why they were doing what they were doing. They saw why, they knew their roles, they saw the purpose, and then they heard the stories. So one of the things you and I can do is if we're going to run an organization or a business or whatever it is, if you have a product and someone writes back and says, hey, these are the best shoes ever made, let me tell you about what they did. They stopped my feet from hurting. They let me run extra miles. You share that with your team, because if your team never sees the outcome of what they're doing, then they find no purpose. They're just going through the motions. And for me, I would love to see what the outcome of what I'm doing, what it's doing for others, because what that does is it energizes me to go, I'm on the right path. I know my purpose. I know that it's matching and lining up. Just like us here at Made for More, hearing back from people about this book, John Parks, for example, Alan as well. from Louisiana as far as our social media and some of the things that they connect with. Some people that are connecting with what we're doing continue to give us feedback. And so does that make us depressed or say, hey, we're bored? No, it encourages us because we know what we're doing is tied to a purpose. And once we see and hear the stories behind what we're doing, it provides what? More purpose, more excitement, and you get to go, hey, I'm hitting the mark. So just like these two types of groups that were surgeons with saving people's lives, one group got bored. I mean, they're literally saving people's lives, and the other was not bored because they saw the life that was saved, that was a mom or a daughter of someone or a father, and they saw the why behind what they were doing. So that's, again, you add purpose to a team, and that's going to build culture. Today, we got to hear Jocko talk to a pastor out of Dallas, and Jocko was asked a question about not raising his voice, that he's never yelled, and so Jocko just asked the pastor, have you ever been yelled at? And the pastor said, yeah. And so Jocko said, so have I. I know what it feels like to be yelled at. I don't yell because I know what it's like to be yelled at. It shrinks you. It makes you feel as if you're lower than. It steals your joy. And for me, that was a direct challenge to me, that you don't get the results you're looking for, that you want as an organization, by forcing yourself to do things the way everybody else does. So if someone's yelling and that's the way they get things out, guess what? That team, that purpose of that team has already taken a back seat because they're being yelled at, they're belittled, their joy is stolen. And so the reason it was a challenge to me is to go, man, when I'm parenting, that's one of my go-tos. That's just the way I am, and I need to change that. I need to change the yelling when things don't go my way. I need to change. I got to recognize the triggers of, hey, I want to raise my voice here. Why does that all tie in with purpose and what we were just talking about? Because if I want to change the trajectory of where I'm going, and my purpose is to be a better father or parent, then I need to change those small little things that are going to challenge me. The last thing I ever want to do is belittle my daughter or make them feel less than or scared, right? So what I want to do is change that, recognize that, and in that moment go, this is an opportunity to grow. And my purpose is greater than the way I feel right now. And the purpose is to be a better father. Just like those two groups that we were just talking about, surgeons, and then just like the police officers that were trying to stop the rioters, their purpose was to build closeness, community, to be in proximity of those people. So wrapping this chapter up, I really want to get to the last chapter. That's why I'm kind of rushing along. But at the end of this chapter, you and I need to ask ourselves, are we trying to lead detached from our team and with lack of direction? And another follow-up is, does our team know why we are even, where we're going and why we're even going there? And I think one of the things is, if your team does have a good purpose and you know the statement and you know where you're going and everybody's tied in, what I would ask you to do is, are you sharing stories of victories? Are you sharing more than just the comments that people leave on your website or on your social media or your reviews? Are you sharing? And you know what, if you're not sharing reviews, I think that's a great thing to do as well. If you have a mass email list that goes to your teams, go on there, look at the reviews, find a good one, and say, hey, this team knocked it out of the park by doing this. I think that provides, again, purpose. It provides feedback to the purpose that you're going after, and it just reignites that in people's hearts. So that's chapter 14. Chapter 15, we are going to talk about how to lead for proficiency. I like this one. I'm not a big food. I don't know how to cook as I've never been in the food industry outside of working with one of our clients, but I don't know how to prep. I don't know how to do certain things. And so there's a culture in New York where, restaurants are shutting down left and right if you don't make it. And here's what the beginning of this chapter says it says this: a successful restaurant, like a successful Antarctic expedition, depends on ceaseless proficiency. Now listen to this. Good food is not enough. Good location is not enough. Good service training, branding, leadership, adaptability, and luck are not enough. Survival depends on putting all of it together night after night. If you fail, you'll disappear. So one of the things I need to ask us right off the bat is, in our organization and in our culture, are we practicing the training, the leadership, all those things, the purpose? Are we doing all those time in and time out every single day? Where are the gaps? Are people tired? Do they need time off? You see what I'm saying? So when you start to talk about purpose and direction, and you know that someone's tired, then one of the things that they were talking about in the military that I listened to Jocko is that they would put them at, if they hit someone that was tired, they'd put them at the back, tell them to get some rest. Why? Because you need that person in the future. If you left that person out front and they got shot, guess what? You just you had a fatality, and now you're down a person. Now you have to retrain someone else. It would be easier for you to give that person a break, tell them to take a couple of days off, come back, get them refocused, and continue to do this time in and time out. So if that means hiring another person or hiring more people, guess what? Your establishment needs that, because your purpose is important, right? And if your purpose is important, then you need people. And so again, going into this chapter, we were learning that, good food isn't good enough, location, all that stuff is not good enough. And he says doing all that stuff together is what matters. So there's this restaurant, they're asking this guy how his restaurants have stayed open so long and why he's just successful. And an example of it is here's what happens. A family is dropping off their daughter for college, and they're a little nervous. The mom and dad are very, very nervous because it's in a big city, right, around New York. And they go out to eat, and the daughter's trying to reassure them that, hey, I'll be okay. This is our dinner together before you guys go home, mom and dad. And they look at the menu, and they look at a dessert, and there's no way that they can afford the dessert. They are they're going, you know what, we can't afford this. And so what does the waiter do? He's been paying attention this whole time. Just like we said, the culture, you got to have leadership, you got to have adaptability, you have all those things and practicing those things. So this waiter goes back to the family, and he knows that this is her last meal with her parents. He's taking all that into account to make their experience better. He goes back and he brings them the dessert for free. It's an expensive dessert. He brings it to them and says, hey, this is on the house. I know that this is going to be a rough transition for your family, but I want to say that we're going to give you this on the house. And so what do you think that did to that family? All of a sudden, this guy overheard the conversation, made the connection, right? And then he delivered the dessert on the house. Now he became a part of an experience. That experience was given in this restaurant. So now this family knows that this restaurant is connected to our final meal with our daughter, a meal or a dessert on the house that we wanted. And it's all because he was listening and paying attention, and he practiced all the things that this restaurant wanted and delivered on. And one of the same restaurants in this organization, the owner was being asked, how do you stay so successful? And while he's being interviewed, he heard some glasses crash and some dishes break, and he was waiting to see what would happen. And they asked him, what are you doing? He got quiet. He was waiting to see which teammate went over there, helped sweep up and get that person that had dropped all the dishes going again. And what he said was, it takes a culture of, hey, you're not alone in this. We're doing this together. And what happened is people came together, cleaned it up, and guess what? They were back going, moving forward, just like nothing happened. And I know that if you and I go out to eat, there's some places where something breaks, you see a waiter or a waitress or a hostess going over there and cleaning it, or someone that is a custodian, not a custodian, but like a busser going over there, and they think it's their responsibility. Not at this place. This guy had built a culture where he says, we are in this together. We are in this together, and you're not going to do something alone. All the way from that waiter taking care of that couple with the dessert, that family with the dessert, to someone breaking glass and dishes, pulling together. And so my question is do you have that kind of culture in your organization? Is it trained? Is it ingrained? And do you practice that day in and day out? Because if we don't, that should be our goal, is to where everyone feels as if, hey, I'm not alone in this. And one of the things he says in this chapter, he says, our number one goal, our number one job is to take care of each other. And that's it. Every action adds on to the others. So I know it's work, I know it's a career, but my question again goes back to is, does every action tell the people around us that we're here to take care of each other? Made for more for me when I'm with some of our clients, whether it's Slab or my one-on-one clients. One of the things I've learned to do better as a consultant is to ask, hey, how can I help in this situation? I don't know how to prep meat. I don't know how to smoke meat, but I can tell you I'll learn and I can help you in this area if it's going to bring value to what we're doing. And so, because when you're successful, I'm successful. And that's the kind of culture that you want to continue to help grow as a leader. And you can't do it alone, right? But you all this said, you have to know your purpose and where you're going. Because if you don't, then you can't put action behind it. So how do we create this type of culture? One of the things they say in this chapter is you create a list of priorities. What's important to you and your team, and do they know it? So priorities meaning our customers, our guests, our workers, our team, the way he has it is, here's the team of priorities that we have is our team, our customers, our guests, our community, our suppliers, and then our investors. Because if your number one goal is your investors, that's great, but how many times are they in your store eating? Really, you need to take care of your team because that's who you hired. You need to take care of your customers / guests, and then you take care of your community, and then your suppliers, and then your investors, because those investors will be happy with you if you take care of your team, because turnover is not, outrageous. And if you have no turnover and you have a great team, guess what? Your customers are taken care of and your guests. So you have to have a list of priorities, and you got to know that your team knows them. And here's the other part is, do they have the freedom to use their autonomy to make the decisions to take care of the people around them? Does your team have the autonomy to take care of a customer or do they come to you every time? Just like that waiter, he felt enough empowerment to take care of that couple, and that family. And what did it do? It created a connection. So does your team have that? So I would think that if you take care of the top of your priority list, all the rest are going to fall into place. So ending this chapter of how to lead proficiency, let's ask ourselves this: do we know who we are as a team? Do we know our priorities? Do we have a list of priorities on our team? Do we have actions that match up to those priorities that our team knows what to do? So if we value the priority of team, how do they know that team is your number one priority? Do you have training sessions? Do you have company parties, picnics, whatever it is? How do you prioritize your team? That's how you have to, again, leading with proficiency. Chapter 16, how to lead for creativity. So we're going to be going through these pretty quick. This chapter discusses the lighthouse method. And the lighthouse method is this. It says, create a purpose by generating a clear beam of signals that link A, where we are, to B, where we want to be. So it's like a beam of light saying, hey, here's where we are, the lighthouse. B is where we're going, where the light's ending. So this chapter is really good. And I'd love to get into more detail, but it's really about how Pixar combined with Disney and how they purchased them. And instead of Pixar coming into Disney and saying, hey, excuse me, we're going to let go of your entire team, Pixar gave Disney the team Disney some direction and some systems and processes, and they set the light beam of here we are and here's where we're going to go. And all of a sudden Disney took their work and their creativity to the next level. So let me tell you this, okay? So Disney had some great movies, but Pixar was outdoing them. And when they bought out Disney, they just said, hey, we're not gonna go in and fire people because they're bad people, right? One of the things I've learned, I don't know if it was Andy Stanley or John Maxwell, but I think this is key before you let anyone go. And it's gonna require ownership. It's gonna require freaking ownership from the owner, business, GM, investors, whoever's running the organization. And it's this: good people, bad systems. Before you fire someone, you need to ask yourself, is this a good person in a bad system, or is this a bad system that's supplying bad people? Either way, before you fire anyone, you need to take ownership of your team and go, have I put a bad system in place? Am I the one that's, putting this out late? Am I the one that's never communicating? If it is, then why are you firing someone that's just a product of a bad system? You have to change a system in order to keep good people, because those good people are going to run away. They're not going to want to be around a bad system. And if they are, they're just stuck in a bad system and you're not getting the result that you want. So something has to change. And so what Disney did is they probably were afraid they were going to lose their job, because Pixar, here comes this massive studio, Pixar, and Pixar just said, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep everybody. And I'm going to read a small part of this book on page 220. And here it says this: there's a tendency in our business, as in all businesses, to value the idea as opposed to the person or team of people. But that's not accurate. Give a good idea to a mediocre team and they'll find a way to screw it up. Listen to this. Give a mediocre idea to a good team and they'll find a way to make it better. That should be the goal. And so when they came to Disney, they realized that they had a good team, that they were putting out great, they were putting out good, movies or animated movies. And Pixar just said, hey, we have some good people. It's just a mediocre system of ideas, so why don't we change this? And here's something that Pixar put together that I want to share with you. It says this: hire people smarter than you, fail early and fail often, listen to everyone's ideas, face towards the problem. B-level work is bad for your soul. It's important to invest in good people than in good ideas. And I think that, again, this speaks backwards to so much of what we see in the world, especially if you're an owner. Like, to me, one of the things that I know I settle for is that it says B-level work is bad for your soul. Sometimes I put things on the back burner that should be on the front, or I just say, hey, I'm going to slack here, and my work is a product of it. I got to step that up. No one else. B-level work is bad for your soul because it just drains you because you know you're capable of more. That's the whole entire reason Made for More was created. Again, it's more important to invest in good people than in a good idea. And I think that, again, that speaks backwards into the culture. People go, hey, go hire this person, hire that person, hire this person. Well, guess what? Take this idea. That's what I'm saying. Maybe you should use my idea, where your good people are going to leave because all they're doing is trying to support your good idea and you don't listen to people. You got to listen to people and invest in those good people so they can create even better ideas. Fail early, fail often. I don't think people fail enough. I think we're afraid of failure. I know I am at times, but when you look at it as a way to learn, and through learning, the quicker you fail often, the quicker you're going to learn to get out of there and what not to do. Hire people smarter than you. If you're the smartest person in the room, right, go to a different room. I think we that's the only way your team succeeds quicker and more often is by saying, hey, I need an idea, or what do you think of this? Tell me what you think. So going back to Disney and Pixar, I want you to listen to the last two paragraphs right here that I'm about to read. They took Pixar took a good team with some flat systems, and they just created a monster of what they're doing now. It says this: the people who made these films are the same people who were there when they were failing, he says. We put in some new systems, they learned the new ways of interacting, and they changed their behavior. And now they're a completely different group of people when they work together. We put in some new systems and they learn new ways of interacting. It's strange to think that a wave of creativity and innovation can be unleashed by something as mundane as changing systems and learning new ways of interacting, but it's true. Because building creative purpose isn't really about creativity. It's about building ownership, providing support, and aligning group energy towards an arduous, error-filled, ultimately fulfilling journey of making something new. So I'm going to ask us again, wrapping up this chapter, does our team have the right systems and processes in place? Are we trying to do the same thing that everyone else is doing? And if so, I'm going to ask why. And if it's not working, then why are we continuing to use it? Like, why are we continuing to use the same systems rather than change them if we're getting the same results? And for me, I have to ask myself the same way. If I'm getting to a place where I'm delivering B level productivity, why am I not changing things to go to A level? Because of my commitment to becoming better. It's going to take some time. It's going to take change, and we're all afraid of change. But you can tell the difference between a highly successful team and a team that settles for B. And I do not want to settle for B. And that's what I'm asking you. What can you do to change this level of your team by looking at systems and processes? So I know we're unpacking quite a bit, but we are going to be on chapter 17, last chapter of this book, last chapter of this section, all about purpose. So what are some ideas for action? How do we deliver this idea of building purpose into our culture? Right after we build safety and after we build vulnerability, how do we build purpose? Here's some ideas for actions. Number one, name and rank your priorities. So most successful groups end up with a small handful of priorities, 5 or fewer, and many of them not coincidentally end up placing their in-group relationships, how they treat one another, at the top of their list. So if your team doesn't have a priority list, I would sit with your team, create them, write them down, post them somewhere, and remind yourself as a leader first that you need to initiate that in your mind so that it flows into our team. So goes the culture, so goes the leader, so goes the culture. Excuse me. Number 2, be 10 times clearer about your priorities as you think you should be. So I think sometimes people have a purpose statement and they think just painting it on the wall is good enough. One of the things that you can do that I would ask. So when I started working with one of our clients, I would go ask employees, hey, what is your purpose? Like, what's the purpose of this organization? I know you have it painted, I know you have it, but do you know it, and why? Most people would, I think 1 out of 10 would get it right. So if you need to figure out if your team knows your credo, your purpose statement, your priorities, I would say, hey, go ask them. Just stop in the day, take an hour out of your day and go ask your staff, your leaders, hey, why do we do what we do? And if they go, because I need a 40-hour-a-week job, 48-hour-a-week job to make sure that I supply for my family, that's their purpose. But what are we doing as an organization, a company, and why do we do it? Who do we say we are? And if they don't answer, again, that's why he has number 2 as be 10 times clear about your priorities as you think you should be. So write them down, share them, share one every week, share one every month, focus on one, whatever you have to do to put the focus on your purpose and your priorities. Number 3, figure out where your group aims for proficiency and where it aims for creativity. One of the cool things he says here is he says, fill the group's windshield with clear, accessible models of excellence, provide high repetition, high feedback training, build vivid, memorable rules of thumb. If X, then Y, spotlight and honor the fundamentals of the skill. So that is your proficiency, right? That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're shooting for. What about creativity? Keenly attend to team composition and dynamics. Define, reinforce, and relentlessly protect the team's creativity and autonomy. Make it safe to fail and to give feedback. Celebrate hugely when the group takes initiative. So you want to make sure that we ask for the team to be proficient in giving them the goal and figuring out the steps to get there, right? But then allow them to be creative in how we get there. Allow them some autonomy, because if you're the one giving the answers and the way you want to do it all the time, then it becomes all about you. And remember, as leaders, it's all on you, but it's not about you. Going on to number 4, embrace the use of catchphrases. Earlier in this book we talked about Zappos. They use talk less, do more. Work hard, be nice. Leave the jersey in a better place. Create raves for guests. Those are little things like that. It's small. Create fun and a little weirdness. Those are little phrases that people use in their organization that say a lot if you just think about it. So talk less, do more. That's Zappos, meaning it was just what it says, talk less and do more. So if you find yourself talking, I need to talk less and I need to do more. I need to do things. I need to put things into action. But if you're talking about who you are as a person, are you talking so much about the goal you're going, or the way you treat people, the goals you're going after? Or are you going to do more? So if that's your motto, talk less, do more, then anything you do, every situation, every adversity, every problem, every win, you talk less, you do more. So when you win, guess what? You're going to celebrate a lot because you talk less, you do more. If you're facing adversity, guess what? You talk less about it, you do more. You see what it's saying? You come up with these statements that are easy to remember and catchphrases that your team can remember and they can fall back on. Number 5, measure what really matters. And I think that's for each team to figure it out. I think that you need to figure out what connections you make in your team and then celebrate them. I believe that every team should celebrate, anniversaries, their yearly anniversary with a company, their birthday, however you want to do that. But I would celebrate the person. Don't just give them a bonus. Make sure we acknowledge it. Tell someone, hey, they've been here for 7 or 8 years. Check this out. Have the conversation with them. What did you learn this year? What is it that you've enjoyed since you've been here? What can we change and make this better? Small, measurable wins, and make sure you measure what matters. If you're, I would just make sure you know the metrics. Number 6, use artifacts. So if you traveled from Mars to Earth to visit successful cultures, it would not take long for you to figure out what they were about, right? Their environments are richly embedded with artifacts that embody their purpose and identity. The artifacts vary widely. The battle gear of soldiers killed in combat at the Navy SEAL headquarters, the Oscar trophies accompanied by the hand-drawn sketches of the original concepts at Pixar, and the rock and sledgehammer behind the glass of the San Antonio Spurs practice facility, embodying the team's catchphrase, pound the rock. But they all reinforce the same signal. Listen to this. This is what matters. So you use artifacts. You make something that you go, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're going after, and this is what we stand for. Use artifacts. Number 7, focus on bar-setting behaviors. One challenge of building purpose is to translate abstract ideas, values, and mission into concrete terms. One way successful groups do this is by spotlighting a single task and using it to define their identity and set the bar for expectations. So you want to make sure that you set that bar setting behavior, but that your team knows. You can't just have it in your mind as a leader and say, hey, this is what I'm shooting for in this section or this job or this duty. One, your team needs to know the expectation, and this is where the bar set, and then allow them the autonomy to go above and beyond, right? But if they don't know that, if they don't even know where the bar's set, then they don't know where they're going. If they don't know where they're going, guess what? They don't know the purpose. So that's the section. That's the end of the book. We went over purpose today, but purpose builds on top of safety. If your team feels safe, they're going to be what the second section of this book is, which is vulnerable. And if they're vulnerable, they're going to go after the purpose, which is the third part. And that's how you build highly successful culture for highly successful teams. And I think that you should pick up this book if you haven't read it, The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. This book has been a heck of a challenge for me, and I hope it's been the same for you. What I would do is if you buy this book and read a chapter a week as a team, maybe it'd take you 3 or 4 months. But I think that's how important it is to go, hey, we're going to read this book in 1 chapter a week, and we're going to do whatever the challenge is at the end of the chapter. We're going to talk about it as a team. So you can pick this apart as a team. Pair this book with Trust and Inspire, and you're gonna have a killer setup, I think. So again, we covered this book because I want us to remember that we are only as good as our team. Our team is only as good as we lead them. We're only as good as our growth is, and our growth is determined by what we are doing. If we aren't doing anything as leaders, then guess what? Our team is not doing anything either. Good team members will leave if you're not growing. So as a leader, your growth is important because it leads to the way you lead, and the way you lead is the way you become successful as a group. You build culture to build people, not a product. I will continue to say that. That's one thing that I've learned that I just wrote down one day, that I go, hey, here's a catchphrase for what we want to do for Made for More. Build culture to build people, not a product. Again, build your culture to build people, not a product. And I promise you, your products will sell because you put people first. So yeah, the culture code, that's it. Just real quick, as we wrap up, I don't want to keep you any longer than I should, but in the weeks to come, we have a pretty big announcement in the weeks to come. And I believe that Jay's going to be helping me. He'll probably be leading that podcast. And so you want to stay tuned for that. I believe that's probably in 2 or 3 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. We'll let you know some big news coming out. And also, would you do me a favor? If you're listening to this and you read this book or you just listen to the podcast, would you reach out to me, Mario at madeformoreconsulting.com, or shoot me a DM or a private message and tell me what your favorite part of this book was and how it helped you, if any at all. And as far as culture goes, if you have any other books, let me know. I'd love to read them and discuss them. And I think that one of the next books is going to be by McRaven, the Master Chief from the Navy SEALs that he just wrote. He has a few books out, so we're going to narrow it down to one. But let me know if this book helped. Like I said, I have one book that I can give away if you email me at mario@madeformoreconsulting.com. I appreciate you listening. Love you guys for all the support. Give us a follow on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast, or follow it, whatever they ask you to do, or wherever you listen to this. But also, if you'll do me a favor and go rate this podcast, that would be amazing. And remember, we exist for more. We're here to offer more. Don't ever give up. Every single one of us is made for more. Later, guys. You too. Peace out.